So, I'm curious about power-wise. We obviously know he runs fast, things like that. How much of the comics will you take, like the guy breaking through the walls and super punches, things like that? How much will you take?
David Nutter, who directed Arrow and the Arrow pilot and Flash pilot, he said, because he also directed the Smallville pilot, he said you gotta keep him as unpowered with powers, early on as you can. Otherwise, he'll become a god and it'll be harder to relate to him. And, we really have taken that to heart. And it was one of the things I think Smallville did really well in that, Clark didn't have his full capabilities. And especially I always think about the episode where he first got heat vision. It wasn't a cool thing. He was terrified that he'd be looking at Lana and he would melt her. And he started to fear that am I going to have to go live in a cabin in the woods by myself? And I found that so heartbreaking. And I think that, for the Flash, in the comics, being able to travel through time and phase matter, it does start to become this, godlike ability that, it would be hard for anyone to ever sort of, bring him down. So we're going to try and keep it, at least early on, as limited as we can. But, ideally, when we do get to that stuff, and we fully plan to, that sometimes some things will come as a fun new cool, look what I can do, and some of these things, like I think they did well in Smallville, will start out as a terrifying, oh my god, I can't believe what's happening to me, and especially I think about the phasing thing where, he could be worried that what happens if I phase while I'm sleeping and I fall in the middle of the earth. I mean, those things could be scary and terrifying, but for right now we want him to just focus on, we'll get to that.
Okay. Will you be adding anything that hasn't already been done as far as his speed? Because I know over time in the comics, there's more stuff that comes along with the speed. I don't think in the first one, could be wrong, but I don't think in the first one he could go through walls. Will you be adding any of your own stuff to that?
No, like I said, the phasing stuff will, and time travel, that's for down the road.
So will there be anything that is uniquely to
the series?
Yeah.
There very well could be. Right now, fortunately, there are so many things. The Flash has been around for so long, and so many great comic book writers, and Mark Waid and Jeff Johns, obviously, have worked on the books. So there's a lot to mine, but I'm sure that there's, we have a lot of really talented young writers on the show, and I'm sure one of them will think of something that, hasn't been thought of before.
So we'll see the treadmill for a while then, huh? Oh, maybe not. Okay.
I didn't say anything.
All right.
Part of the accelerating and exciting thing in the sense of, I think we talked about this, but where Arrow's so grounded on Flash, you can have fun in the sense of, you can have a thinking, talking gorilla, telepathic gorilla, you can have an acting bull.
Yeah. Obviously on Arrow, especially early on, it was meant to be very grounded and whatnot. And part of the reason we introduced the Mirakuru storyline last year with Slade and the Human Weapons was, for us it was a little bit of gateway superpowers. If you could accept that much, well then you could accept the Flash. And it was really Greg's idea that, we also include the particle accelerator, because then you understand where all of these villains came from, and you didn't have this one seminal event make him, but then have to have a seminal event make all of these other people. Now these people are sort of out there, it does allow you to, push the boundaries certainly far further than we ever did or will on Arrow. But hopefully, I think the thing that will keep it like Arrow is the way in which people view these impossible, miraculous things, that they still look at them in a very grounded way. And if you saw the pilot, one of my favorite moments in the pilot is Jesse Martin, once he finally looks at Barry after he's seen what he can do, the look on his face is really the look of somebody who's seen a miracle. And it's not oh, neat. Or, we'll never have a show, especially early on, where people are oh yeah, guy's flying, been there, done that. I mean, this isn't Metropolis. It's, these things are all happening for the first time, and there's going to be people who are skeptical about it, and people who are afraid of it, and hopefully that realistic reaction will make it feel like it's still in the world of Arrow, even if more miraculous things are happening.
What's the hardest part about creating an origin story?
I think the hardest part is setting up his emotional life before, and really because in a TV show, in a movie, the end of Act 1 could have been when he got his powers, but in a TV show, you really kind of want to get there by the end of Act 1, and TV is only about 12 minutes. In a movie, it could be 25. So, really sort of like establishing his world and who he is to all the people in it, like establishing that as fast and precisely, but as strongly emotionally as you can, so that you can spend more time, afterwards. I think one of the hardest things for us in this was we'd already introduced Barry on Arrow, and there was a lot of discussion amongst ourselves and amongst the studio and the network about how much we should honor what we had done on Arrow and how much we needed to make this for a brand new audience. And so I feel like we sort of struck the right balance between, if you watched 8 and 9, we didn't really do anything that violated what you saw if you enjoyed it, but if you didn't watch 8 and 9 of Arrow from season 2, you could come into it and just experience the Flash on its own terms.
Is it tough for you being out here, pretty distracted from everyone? Are you sure? 2 other TV shows, or is that helpful, do you think?
They're doing their own thing, and I think that, one of the things DC did really well this year is, for all the shows that they're doing, they're so completely different. I mean, even Arrow and Flash are 2 very different shows. One is like grounded, crime, revenge, Shakespearean drama, and Flash is more blue sky, superpowers. So even the show we're doing are 2 very different shows. And obviously, Gotham and iZombie are their own things. But we never feel like we're only in competition with ourselves. And I also really believe that a rising tide lifts all ships. And I'm as excited as a fan to see Gotham and iZombie. If I wasn't doing these shows, those would be the shows I was watching. So, we're just sort of happy to be here.
Thank you so much. We're gonna wrap this up.